Hello beautiful people of the internet, how are you doing today? My name is Jackie and welcome back to my channel. Today in this video I'm going to be talking about all the books that I read in the month of June 2020. So in the month of June I read 6 books. That is awesome, possibly a personal best for me, or at least the best I've had in a while, for a total of 2,276 pages. But my average star rating was only 2.916 out of 5. Yeah, I read a lot of books this month, and the month started out great. But by the end, it had really just taken a turn. So let's talk about that. The first book that I read in June was a rare non-fiction read, and that was The Plantagenets, The Warrior Kings and Queens Who Made England by Dan Jones. I gave this book 4 stars. I previously read Dan Jones's book on the War of the Roses, and I decided to pick this one up. My dad has read it already, and I am really interested in medieval England. That is just one of my extremely niche interests, and overall I did enjoy this. I think a good thing about Dan Jones's writing from the 2 books of his that I've read is that even though it's nonfiction, it is very accessible, and it's not really too stiff. It still has good descriptions, like if you were reading something that was fictional. So overall, I did enjoy this, and it definitely taught me things that I didn't know, because though I do like medieval England, I am more so an expert on the War of the Roses and the Tudors era, and so people who came before that I don't know as much about. So there was definitely a lot of interesting stuff in this book. I think because this book is covering almost 300 years of history, there wasn't as much detail about specific people as I would have liked. Like, I could read an entire book just on Eleanor of Aquitaine, and I am sure someday soon I will, because she sounds like she was a really awesome medieval woman. But I can't really blame the book for that, because the book is covering the entire Plantagenet dynasty. If it went into super detail about every single king and queen, this would be a 2,000-page book, probably. The other reason I didn't give this book a full 5 stars is because sometimes I think Dan Jones presents a historical event in a way that's more simplistic than what actually happened. And I think that's probably because this book is really supposed to be introductory, and I think it's great for people who don't know a lot about history and just want to get into it and learn about this period. But that was a little bit of a turnoff for me. Like, for example, there is a historical murder in this book, and Dan Jones presents one suspect as if this person was 100% behind it, but when I looked up this murder, they're actually not entirely sure who was the one who ordered it, and it could have been multiple people, and there's no theory that's 100% proven. But he only presented that one theory. Had you just read this book and not looked it up, you wouldn't have known that wasn't 100% what happened. So that's why I couldn't give this book 5 stars, but it was still an interesting read, and I learned stuff from it. Next, I read The Testaments by Margaret Atwood, which is the sequel to The Handmaid's Tale, and I gave this book 4 stars. I actually liked it a lot more than I thought I would. I wanted to read this because I like The Handmaid's Tale. I like Margaret Atwood from the one book of hers I'd read before this, but I wasn't sure what this book was really going to add to the story, because I think the ending of The Handmaid's Tale was really good and I liked its ambiguity. I also heard some people I know in real life who read this didn't like it so much and didn't think it was as good as The Handmaid's Tale. But overall, I actually really enjoyed this. So this book is set years after the original story, and it's following 3 main perspectives. One is the perspective of Agnes, who is a girl who was raised in Gilead. She is a commander's daughter, and she was brought up to someday become a wife. Another perspective is Daisy, a teenage girl living in Canada outside of Gilead, but then something happens that gets her directly involved in the situation in Gilead. The third perspective is Aunt Lydia's, which, wow, I did not expect to love Aunt Lydia's chapters so much. But those were my favorite part of the book. This book was overall really strong, and I liked it more than I thought I did. There were some moments where it made me feel genuine emotions, And I really loved Aunt Lydia's chapters, and I really liked the Agnes chapters as well. The reason this is 4 stars is I really did not like Daisy's chapters. I know she's only 16, and 16-year-old girls are often stupid and they think they know everything, but they don't, because they're young and naive. But I was just really annoyed with her, and sometimes she was doing things that I was like, you're like, it just doesn't make sense. And also her storyline, logically, when you think it through, it doesn't make sense, and it was clearly just done by the author as a plot convenience, because it was necessary for the plot. Even though if you actually thought it through, it makes absolutely no sense. I think if you've seen the Handmaid's Tale TV show especially, it's not that hard to figure out where the plot is going in some aspects. I'm going to keep this spoiler-free because I do include spoiler sections in my Goodreads review, so I will link that down below if you want to see some of my more spoilery thoughts. And I think that the last 100 pages were not as interesting or engaging as earlier parts of the book. But overall, I did like this a lot. I enjoyed it while I was reading it, and I liked that the ending was still ambiguous, but more hopeful than the original Handmaid's Tale. Because the reason I quit watching the Handmaid's Tale TV show is because while it's spectacularly done, I always felt extremely bleak and sad after I finished watching it. So I liked that this book ended on a more hopeful note. The next book that I read in June was Cards on the Table by Agatha Christie. This is one of the Hercule Poirot mysteries, and it was not one of my favorites. I didn't think it was bad. I gave it 3 stars, but not as good as some of Agatha Christie's other stuff that I've read. So in this book, Hercule Poirot is invited to a bridge party at the house of the mysterious Mr. Shaitana. Also invited to the party are 3 other investigators of different kinds, including the mystery novelist Ariadne Oliver, who makes more appearance in the Hercule Poirot books and is considered to be sort of a fictionalized version of Christie herself. Also invited to this party are 4 other people who Hercule Poirot later finds out have all committed murder in the past. And while Hercule Poirot and the other investigators are playing bridge in one room, the 4 killers are in another room playing bridge with Mr. Shaitana. And during the game, one of those 4 murders him. Super, super interesting concept. But I feel like its execution wasn't as interesting. First of all, the ending is just not going to be as surprising because there's only 4 people who could have possibly committed the murder. Only 4 people who were in that room. Nobody went in or out. So I wasn't surprised by the ending at all, and that's just one of the flaws in the setup of the book. It is what it is. For reasons I can't really explain, I just wasn't as engaged in this as I am in other Agatha Christie's. Maybe it was because there were so few suspects, but I just didn't feel that same itch to keep turning the pages and find out what happened. It just didn't affect me as much as some of her other books. I mean, it wasn't bad. That's why I gave it 3 stars, but it was not as good as some of her other stuff. I did enjoy the side character of Rhoda. I know a lot of people love Ariadne Oliver, but she was actually overshadowed by Rhoda's character to me. I really enjoyed the subplot involving her. And some other things about this book that bothered me were Agatha Christie over and over again refers to Mr. Shaitana as, I don't even know if I can say this right, Mephistophelian. And the first time she did it, I was like, wow, great word, Agatha Christie. But then people keep referring to him as that over and over again, that by the end, I never wanted to hear that word again, because it had been done so many times. Also, characters in this book continually refer to Shaitana by this slur, which apparently was a term that predominantly British people would use against people who were Italian or from other areas in the Mediterranean. So I didn't like that, obviously. I mean, Agatha Christie's books were written predominantly in the 30s and 40s, so there are sometimes racist things that are said, or just generalizations about what a certain ethnicity of people are like. Like, for example, I think in this book, somebody said something like, well, Bulgarians don't read, which is just, not a single person in Bulgaria reads, apparently. And, I almost mentioned it last month when I read The Murder of Roger Ackroyd, because there was a character who would say things that were racist, but then, I hope this isn't a spoiler, but then in the end, the character who was saying the racist things wasn't a good guy in the end. So a lot of times people who say racist things in these books are the villains, but there are other times when there's much more casual racism. So yeah, I don't know. I just kind of felt like I ought to mention that because, it's there and it's not great. So this is where my reading month really took a nosedive and things started getting bad for a little while. So from my library, I got the book Shadow on the Crown by Patricia Bracewell. This is the first in the Emma of Normandy trilogy, and after reading the Plantagenets, I was just kind of in a history kick for a little while, so I wanted to read a historical fiction. And this one had pretty high ratings on Goodreads. I thought it would be interesting to read a historical fiction about Emma of Normandy because she sounds like she was super interesting. She was the wife of 2 different kings of England, and obviously we don't know a lot about her, so you have to take some liberties, but I thought, hey, her life I bet was really interesting, and I would love to read a fictionalized account of it. However, this book was just really disappointing, and I only gave it 2 stars. It was not great. It was not great. This book mainly follows Emma when she's sent to England to marry the much older King Ethelred, whose wife recently died, and he has a bunch of adult children from his first marriage. And this entire book only spans about a year in Emma's life, so not a lot happens. I really didn't like any of the characters in this book because I felt like all of them were extremely one-dimensional. Emma is the protagonist, and I felt bad for her, but was I really invested in her? Not really. Ethelred is just an extremely one-dimensional, horrible person. There is a lot of marital rape in this book, which is not great, to say the least, and I don't like reading rape in historical fiction and fantasy. Listen, I get that sexual violence happened in history, it still happens now, but I don't want to read about it constantly. People in history also had rotten teeth, and you all choose not to include that, but, graphic rape? It happened! Get over it! Yeah, I'm so emotionally exhausted. I can't deal with it anymore. If you know any good historical fiction or fantasy even that doesn't include rape, please let me know because, man, I'm just so tired. Another one of the main perspectives that we're getting in this book is from a teenage girl named Elgiva, and historically her real name was Elfgifu, I don't know if I'm saying that right, I'm sorry, of Northampton. I thought her name sounded familiar, and when I looked her up, I found out that she was the first wife of King Canute, who was Emma of Normandy's second husband. Canute left her to marry Emma. So in this book, these two are set up as rivals, and I'm sure that's a rivalry that's going to be going on for the entire trilogy. And Elgiva, as she's known in this book, she wants to be queen, and she will do whatever to be queen because she was taught that was her destiny. And so I thought her character, we were going to really explore how she was used as a political pawn by her family. However, that didn't really happen. And basically, she's just a one-dimensional femme fatale who uses her body to manipulate men, and whoever she's got to seduce to get the throne, she will do it. There was a really weird description about how when she was 13, the king fondled her breast. I don't know what to say. And also, Elgiva's relationship with her brother had some really weird incestuous notes to it, and okay, we don't need to talk about it any more than that. It was very disturbing. And then we also have Ethelstan, who is the son of King Ethelred, and he is set up as Emma's love interest in this book. However, he is just the most boring man with no personality, and I don't understand why these two fell in love. The book doesn't even really tell us. Apparently, they meet off-page, they hate each other, then they go on one horse ride, and then they go for more off-page horse rides, and suddenly they're in love. Because they rode horses together sometimes. I just didn't care, okay? I didn't care. That's the best way to describe it. I didn't care what was happening in this book. I didn't care about any of these people, and I'm not continuing on in the series. What more do I need to say? It was not good. Next, the worst book that I read this month, the worst book that I've read since The Girls, was The Elizas by Sarah Shepard. I gave this 1 star. Yeah, it was bad. It was really, really bad. Our main character, Eliza, is a young writer. She's 23 years old, and her first book is about to be published. Great, good for her. And basically what happens is she's found at the bottom of a swimming pool at a hotel in Palm Springs, and her family assumes that she's tried to kill herself because in the past, due to a brain tumor that she attempted suicide many times. But she's adamant that she was pushed. Someone tried to kill her, and now she is having hallucinations, or maybe they're real, of a woman who looks just like her that is following her. And so this whole book is about her trying to figure out who pushed her, what is really going on in her life, and her life starts having parallels to this book that she wrote. So we're also reading excerpts from this book. And it sounds like a really interesting concept, but yeah, it was not good at all, and it was quite painful to read. It was not great. I'm just going to read to you from my Goodreads review for this book, because that really says it all. This book was bleeping awful. I said after I read the first 2 books in the Amateur series, also by Sarah Shepard, that I was breaking up with Sarah Shepard. But I got this book for cheap, and the plot sounded interesting, so I gave it a try anyways. And then I summarized the plot. We'll just skip that part. From the beginning, this book was bizarre. Eliza had a fascination with death as a child, and it is said she would hang her Barbie dolls from makeshift nooses and write their suicide notes. The bleep. Eliza is a huge bleep, and at some points, I wanted to push her into a pool. She was incredibly judgy of other people's appearances, saying that her stepsister's poor style meant that she was asking to be bullied, and she is frequently thinking about how her love interest, Desmond, should change aspects of his appearance, and how she's going to force him to shave or cut his hair. I felt bad for Desmond at first, but he's creepy as well. After just meeting Eliza, he's calling her his Lady of the Lake and the light of his life, and he literally at one point says he wants to save her. Cut it with the King Arthur fantasies, Desmond. You just met this chick, you weirdo. Sarah Shepard forced me to read lines like, if Picasso were still alive, she'd give him a blowjob. And descriptions of a curiosity shop that sells whale penises, and cat penises, and raccoon penises. Why is Sarah Shepard so obsessed with animal penises? I will never be able to get these images out of my memory. Said curiosity shop is owned by a character named Stedman, who was one of Eliza's roommates, along with his sister, Kiki. Stedman and Kiki. What are these character names? And everyone and their mother is telling Eliza about how brilliant her book The Dots is, when in actuality the writing is average and the reveal obvious. I'm just gonna spoil this book because it's trash and you shouldn't read it. The Dots is about a girl named Dot who is suffering from seizures, and her namesake Aunt Dorothy, who, spoiler, is very clearly poisoning Dot because she has Munchausen by proxy. End spoiler. Then the big reveal in the book is that, spoiler, Eliza had a crazy aunt named Eleanor who was poisoning Eliza, but the memory was repressed by some therapy her parents got her, which Eliza describes as including weird Native American herbs, because yeah, this book is casually racist at points too. End of spoiler. Great. Thanks for wasting my time. There's also another part that struck me as casually racist where the character of Dot, which is the book within the book, she wraps a scarf around her head so the paparazzi won't recognize her, and it's referred to as a makeshift hijab. Yeah, this book was terrible. Don't read it. Yeah, I used to like Sarah Shepard's books when I was in high school, you know, I liked Pretty Little Liars, The Lion Game, and I don't know. She is just trying my patience, but I will probably end up giving her another try in the future because I hate myself, apparently. Yeah, so don't read this book. It was bad. I knew people said it wasn't good, but I was going to give it a try anyway because the plot was interesting, and that was a mistake. That was a big mistake. So at least the final book I read in June was better than the last two, but still not great. And that was The Escape Room by Megan Golden, which I gave 3.5 stars. The Escape Room takes place in the cutthroat, crazy world of finance in New York City. We have 4 characters who all work for this firm, and they are sent to what they think is going to be a team-building exercise in an escape room. But actually, the 4 of them all end up trapped in an elevator together as a form of revenge. And then the other perspective is from their former co-worker, Sarah Hall, and you're really just trying to figure out who put all these people in this elevator together, who is out to get them, and why. What is it that these 4 people did that resulted in them being punished this way? And I guess I would describe The Escape Room as a thriller, but not a mystery, because it is 100% obvious who it is that put these 4 in the elevator. And so really the only question is exactly what it was they did, which, I mean, also, like, it becomes pretty clear what they did, but the exact specifics of the situation aren't known. So I had mixed feelings about this. I gave it 3.5 instead of just 3 because I did like it. It just wasn't quite what I wanted from it. I think this had a really great concept, but I just wish there had been a little more mystery, like some more twists, because it was thrilling and the scenes in the elevator were incredibly tense and suspenseful, well done. But, you know, the ending, to me, wasn't a surprise. So I just wish there had been a little more mystery in this book, and that's why I gave it 3.5 stars. I don't know if what I just said made any sense whatsoever, but whatever. So those were the books that I read in the month of June 2020. There were some highs, there were some lows, some really, really low lows. But hey, I read 6 books and that's great, you know? That's really great for me. I know lots of other people read so much more than 6 books a month, but I'm proud of how many books that I got to read. And I am currently, according to my Goodreads, 7 books ahead of schedule for my goal. So that's crazy, and I think maybe I will make it to 50 books this year after all. I didn't think I could do it, but I guess being trapped in my house for so long leaves me with very few options other than to read to pass time. Anyways, guys, thank you so much for watching this video. Please give it a big thumbs up if you enjoyed, and subscribe to my channel if you want to see more from me. I post new videos every single Wednesday. My social media links are down below if you want to follow me on Tumblr, Instagram, or be my friend on Goodreads. I will also be linking some Black Lives Matter resources in my description as I have been doing for the past several videos, so please check those out for petitions or places you could possibly donate if you want to help this very worthy cause. And I think that's it for me today, guys. So thanks, and I hope you have an amusing rest of your day. Bye, and I'll see you in the next video.